Greetings, Code Monkeys, and welcome back to Superhero Month. So, the Avengers. I get the sense that the majority of people enjoy the Avengers movies more than I do, which is not to say that I dislike them, or at least not to say that I dislike the first one. I kind of do dislike the second one, but we'll get to that in a bit. They just don't really light my world on fire the way that they seem to for other people. The first Avengers movie is basically a victory lap for Marvel. Just sort of celebrating the fact that they managed to get this far. It's a movie where you can definitely feel Joss Whedon's influence, and Joss Whedon. I have a complicated relationship with Joss Whedon. For a long time, he was considered a pretty untouchable when it came to, you know, being a very feminist writer and being kind of the master of ensemble pieces. But he's come under a lot of criticism in recent years. One of the main kind of bits of thought about Joss Whedon in recent years has been that he doesn't seem like so much of a feminist writer as he seems like a guy who fetishizes a very particular type of woman, and I don't think that that reading is entirely without merit, but I think that that particular aspect of Joss Whedon is best left for another time, because I don't see it as super relevant to the Avengers in particular. What I do see relevant to the Avengers is the issue of Joss Whedon as the ensemble director and Joss Whedon as the snarky dialogue writer. Now, I definitely see why they got Joss Whedon to be the guy sort of at the helm of the first Avengers movie. I mean, Joss Whedon has, you know, a very sort of nerdy kind of background, and he also is known for being able to handle ensemble pieces really well. And overall, I do find him pretty well suited to the Avengers. Like, he does a pretty good job of giving more or less equal time to the various players in the Avengers. Like, it doesn't feel overly like Captain America's movie or Tony Stark's movie or the Hulk's movie. Like, it feels like a movie that belongs to the entire team. However, his trademark snarky dialogue, I mean, it feels well suited to Tony Stark, certainly, but much less so when it comes to Thor or Bruce Banner, or especially Captain America. And because of Joss Whedon's love for this sort of snarky back and forth dialogue, it means that all of the characters in this movie kind of end up getting painted with the same general brush. The result being that they feel kind of shallow, and this movie feels like a little fanficky, and even that's not the right thing to say, because there is good fan fiction. Like, it doesn't feel like it was written by the people making the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It feels like it was written by somebody who saw the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, thought they were cool, and wanted to make something cool out of it, if that makes sense. But the actors do a really good job, and they do everything they can to make the characters feel distinct from one another, even though they're all kind of written more or less the same way. And Mark Ruffalo in particular is a really excellent Bruce Banner. Like, I really like what he does with that character. I'll address Mark Ruffalo a little bit more when I talk about the Incredible Hulk, the Ed Norton movie. And I also like what this movie does to kind of set up a little bit of the dynamic between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, which ends up getting carried further into the series, and I think that all works pretty well. Plus, the action is cool, and the movie looks really good, which is, you know, it's a plus. Age of Ultron, though, man, it's probably the only Marvel Cinematic Universe movie that I've seen thus far that I just straight up don't like. The whole movie really just feels like it's kind of treading water until the characters get to the Civil War story arc, which, you know, they basically are. Nothing of any particular consequence to the greater MCU really happens in this movie. There's very little in the way of forwarding character development, and a lot of the character development that they do have is just bad. In particular, the whole Bruce and Natasha thing is really stupid and forced and lame, and just doesn't fit either for Bruce as a character or for Natasha as a character. And I really hated that. The one major death has pretty much no dramatic weight to it whatsoever. I will say that I do kind of enjoy Ultron himself, like, conceptually speaking. Like, the whole idea that he is Tony Stark taken to a logical lack of empathy type of conclusion. That's cool, and that's interesting. Although it does, unfortunately, lead to, again, some pretty bad character development for Tony Stark. Like I said before, Tony Stark is a character that causes almost all of his own problems. But this movie actually goes out of its way to say that, hey, Tony Stark was actually right about a thing, basically just because they needed to introduce the character of Vision. Again, it's hard to explain without going into sort of spoilery territory, so I won't, but that's just my general opinion on the on the whole overall arc as it applies to Tony in particular. There are some little moments that I definitely do like the scene where everybody's just kind of chilling out and like everyone's trying to lift the hammer. I do think that's pretty entertaining. In particular, there's that little moment where Cap kind of does manage to make Mjolnir move just a little bit, and that's pretty funny. Although honestly, given what has been established about Mjolnir and what you have to do to prove yourself worthy of the power of Thor, it doesn't make any sense that Steve Rogers wouldn't be able to lift that hammer easily, because everything that Thor has done to prove himself worthy of power has been done, like, 10 times more so by Steve Rogers. And actually, in the comic book, Steve Rogers is one of the only people besides Thor who can lift Mjolnir. A popular way to read that scene is that Steve Rogers actually does start to lift Mjolnir, but realizes as the hammer is coming up off the table that it would really kind of destroy Thor's sense of self-worth if he did lift it, so he chooses not to. Although if I were writing the whole, you know, hammer thing, what I would have done is this. Imagine some, like, big giant battle scene is going on and Thor just gets completely knocked on his ass, he loses his grip on Mjolnir and it goes skittering off to the side somewhere, and he's got that sort of, you know, recent explosion kind of ringing in his ears thing, and as he's getting up from his daze, you know, he finds that Steve is like helping him to his feet, and he's just like, you gotta get up, we gotta keep going. Oh, here, you drop this, and just hands him Mjolnir and just walks away having no idea what it is he just did. And Thor is just staring after him like, what? That's how I would have done it. I don't know, but anyway, just moving on. I also think James Spader does a really good job with Ultron. Like, Ultron could have very easily been a very, very boring villain, but James Spader gives him a lot of little personality quirks and just makes him super entertaining to watch, so I really liked and appreciated that. I also appreciate that Hawkeye really gets a chance to shine in this movie. Like, that's probably the best thing about the second Avengers movie, is that it really does interesting and very unexpected things with Hawkeye's character. I really do like that. But yeah, overall, not a real big fan. I watched it once and that was enough for me. On the worth meter, I would definitely give the first Avengers movie a worth owning, and I would give Age of Ultron a worth renting, because I do think it's worth seeing, like, you know, at least once, if for no other reason than to kind of form your own opinions of it and kind of get a little bit more context for Civil War. The Avengers movies, just generally speaking, have a lot of really great individual moments, but ultimately they're just not terribly deep. This is partially because of the ensemble cast, partially because of the way the characters are written, and in the case of Avengers 2, partially because of some studio interference that ended up truncating a pretty major storyline within the movie concerning Thor. The movies are a great spectacle to watch, and they're definitely entertaining, but they just don't have quite enough depth and character development to be really meaty and satisfying the way that the individual movies are. I definitely think that they could get there, and, you know, Marvel certainly has a lot more hits than misses, so I'm not, like, writing off the Avengers series entirely, but it's definitely a mixed bag of a series, so be aware of that when you're getting into it. And that is pretty much it for the Avengers. Next time I'm going to be talking about the Incredible Hulk, which is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even though its events have been pretty much ignored for a variety of reasons that I may or may not talk about when it comes to doing that video. But like I said, that's about it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you're enjoying Super Month generally so far. We're about halfway through. In fact, we're exactly halfway through. So until next time, Code Monkeys, I will see you later.